Okay, so ever walk into a workplace and you just feel like the loudest voice in the room somehow gets all the oxygen?
Oh, absolutely. Happens all the
You
time.
know the type, right?
Yeah.
Always ready with a story, super comfortable chatting up the boss.
Yeah, and maybe they seem to get noticed just for, well, being visible.
Exactly. And meanwhile, you see these like really quiet, brilliant people just working away,
Absolutely crushing deadlines, delivering amazing quality work.
but they're just flying totally under the radar. It can feel incredibly unfair, right?
It's uh it's a dynamic we see pretty much everywhere. We're diving into this world of, really talented folks who aren't naturally vocal.
Right.
Maybe they find self-promotion awkward or even like cringy.
Yeah.
And this isn't some niche thing, it's a common challenge for loads of great workers who just struggle with that idea of, tooting their own horn.
And let's be honest,
Mm.
you probably know someone exactly like this, or maybe, just maybe, you are this person.
Mhm.
You do phenomenal work, the kind that genuinely moves the needle. But the thought of standing up and like broadcasting your achievements, it feels utterly exhausting.
Totally.
So why does it matter? Well, because when valuable, quiet talent gets overlooked, opportunities get missed.
Big time. For the individual, for their team.
And the whole organization, really.
Yeah.
We all lose out when we don't see and appreciate the full spectrum of contributions.
It's fascinating, actually, how deeply this preference for overt visibility is embedded in so many workplace cultures.
Agreed. So our mission in this deep dive is to really unpack why this happens. What are the forces that cause quiet talent to get passed over?
Yeah, let's get into that.
And we'll look at some genuinely inspiring real-life examples of wildly successful people who are definitely not known for being the life of the party.
Good ones, too.
Then we're going to get super practical. We'll share concrete strategies on how you can increase your visibility at work without having to pretend to be someone you're not,
Right. No fake personality changes needed.
or forcing yourself into situations that just feel wrong. And finally, we'll touch on how all of this plays out in, the modern world of remote and digital work.
Think of us as being firmly in the corner of the quiet achiever here. We want to offer some understanding, some practical tools, and maybe just a few gentle nudges toward making sure your valuable contributions get seen.
Okay, let's get into the why then. You mentioned it's common for professionals who quietly do excellent work to still be invisible. What's really going on there?
Well, a major factor is something often called the extrovert ideal in the workplace. For like decades, many organizations have implicitly and sometimes explicitly favored and rewarded outgoing, highly visible behavior.
Ah, oh,
And this often means introverted employees get feedback like they need to speak up more or network harder or just be more confident.
right. That sounds familiar.
The pressure is subtle or sometimes not so subtle to basically conform to a more extroverted mold.
So it's like the system is kind of set up to notice the talkers, even if their work isn't necessarily better.
Exactly. Studies and, just workplace observations bear this out. Extroverts often find it easier to get their efforts noticed simply by talking about them.
How so?
Well, in meetings, through networking, even just in casual chats in the hallway, it's less about the objective quality of the work sometimes and more about the strategy of making it visible.
And it's not just about missing out on praise,
Yeah.
right? Being reserved can actually work against you because people misinterpret it.
Absolutely. Silence can be really misleading. It's often misread as disengagement or lack of interest,
Wow.
or even a lack of competence. There are countless stories of really capable team members being labeled as uninterested just because they didn't talk much in group settings.
That's tough.
Yeah, one particularly harsh example I heard was an introverted employee, excellent work, but she got feedback that hardly anyone in the company knew about it.
Just because she was quiet.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Because she was quiet and didn't socialize much.
Wow, that feels incredibly unfair. So someone could be doing stellar work, but because they aren't chatting about it, people just assume they aren't doing much.
Precisely. Colleagues or even managers might draw totally incorrect conclusions about their skill or their contribution level based purely on their visibility or, lack of it.
It just highlights how easily silence gets misjudged in cultures that really equate speaking up with being capable.
That's it.
So if you're not loud, people make assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't actively promote your own wins,
Yeah.
then your hard work risks becoming invisible. Plain and simple. If you don't make an effort to share what you've accomplished,
Oh.
people may genuinely not realize the depth or the impact of your contributions.
Right.
Many quieter individuals, especially introverts, they really dislike bragging or even just like small talk focused on their own wins.
Yeah, that can feel really awkward.
There's often this implicit belief that, the quality of the work should just speak for itself.
Which, frustratingly, it often doesn't. Turns out workplace telepathy isn't really a thing.
Agrees.
Hmm?
Your boss doesn't automatically know you stayed up late polishing that presentation or solved that nagging tech issue everyone else ignored.
And the practical outcome of that. When promotions, exciting projects, or leadership opportunities come up, they frequently go to the more vocal colleagues.
The ones who've mastered the art of making their contributions known.
Exactly.
And then in bigger organizations, or now with so much remote work, there's that added layer of out of sight, out of mind, right?
Oh, this is huge right now. Quiet contributors can very easily fade into the background when you're not bumping into people in the hallway or by the coffee machine.
Makes sense.
There's a natural visibility bias. Managers and colleagues tend to remember and reward those they interact with or hear from most often.
So if you're the one quietly delivering brilliant code or drafting amazing reports without much fanfare,
You are genuinely at risk of becoming a forgotten asset. A business leader actually pointed out that some of the most valuable silent stars get overlooked precisely based on their personal preference to remain quiet, introspective, or less social.
that out of sight, out of mind thing is really real for less vocal talent then.
It really is.
It sounds like being the incredibly talented bass player in a band, you're essential, you hold it all together, make everyone else sound great.
Right.
But the lead singer gets the spotlight. Okay, I've definitely been the meeting mime in the corner, just hoping someone would know my genius.
Yeah.
It's clear these aren't personal failings, though. They're systemic dynamics in a lot of workplaces.
And understanding that why is the crucial first step, I think.
It absolutely is. So, okay, we've looked at the challenges, but here's the really encouraging part. You absolutely do not have to be loud or change your fundamental personality to make a massive impact and be highly successful.
Exactly. That's the critical message.
There are incredible examples throughout history and right now of people who achieved monumental things entirely on their own quiet terms.
Totally. Think about someone like Rosa Parks. By all accounts, she was inherently soft-spoken, reserved.
Even described as shy, right?
Yeah. She wasn't the person giving rising speeches at rallies.
But her impact was just immeasurable.
It came from a single, profoundly courageous action, refusing to give up her seat on that bus. That one act of quiet defiance spoke volumes.
Ignited the Montgomery bus boycott, inspired a whole generation.
Exactly.
She even titled her memoir, Quiet Strength. That says it all, doesn't it?
It really does.
You can be a leader, a change maker, a force for good without ever needing to yell into a microphone. That example alone is powerful proof that quietness is definitely not weakness.
And shifting gears a bit, maybe to the tech world, think about Apple's co-founder Steve Wozniak, a classic, brilliant introvert.
Was the engineering genius behind the first Apple computers, basically single-handedly.
That's him. He was reportedly so shy, especially in the early days, like at the Homebrew Computer Club or early Apple meetings.
Yeah.
He'd sit at the back, never raise his hand to speak. He's admitted he was too scared to open my mouth in any way that would cause conflict, even when he knew he had better ideas.
Wow. So if he wasn't talking, how did he get noticed? Especially with someone as outwardly charismatic as Steve Jobs around.
Well, instead of trying to compete with Jobs on charisma or public speaking, Wozniak let his technical brilliance do the talking.
Makes sense.
He once reflected that being shy meant the only way I could get noticed was by doing something great.
And boy, did he.
He certainly did. He didn't just design the hardware. He wrote an entire basic programming language from scratch just to show what his computer could do.
Talk about leading by example. He couldn't bring himself to brag, so he built a revolutionary product instead.
Yeah.
Wozniak's story is just undeniable proof that a quiet, focused innovator can absolutely thrive and shape the future, often working diligently behind the scenes.
And it's not just Wozniak, If there was an introvert billionaires club, it'd be pretty well populated.
Really? Like, who comes to mind?
Well, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, these guys are titans in tech and finance, and none are exactly famous for being the life of the party.
That's true.
Gates has spoken openly about the advantages introverts bring: deep thinking, focus, creativity, and how they can complement extroverts by, say, hiring them for roles needing more social energy.
Interesting.
Elon Musk identifies as an introvert who had to consciously train himself to handle all the public speaking required of a CEO. He's mentioned how much practice it took.
Right.
And Warren Buffett famously had severe public speaking anxiety early on. He conquered it with a Dale Carnegie course, but at heart, he's still someone who prefers quiet time reading and thinking deeply over constant social stuff.
So the common thread here is really clear. Being quieter by nature does not put a ceiling on your potential for massive success.
Not at all. And it's true in creative fields, too. J.K. Rowling famously conceived the entire Harry Potter universe largely in solitude.
Right, the train journey story.
Exactly. She was so hesitant early on, she didn't even ask a stranger for a pen when hers ran out on that train. She just imagined the whole story in her head instead.
And that incredible imagination, nurtured in quiet observation, made her one of the most successful authors ever.
Monumentally successful.
Or even in sports, think Michael Jordan. Fiercely competitive on the court, known for intense focus.
Absolutely. Self-reliance.
But off-court, often described as quite introverted. He channeled that inward intensity into becoming, well, maybe the greatest athlete in history.
These examples, from activism to tech, arts, sports, they all underscore a powerful truth. Quiet achievers can and absolutely do reach the absolute pinnacle of their fields.
So if this sounds like you are in excellent company.
Definitely. And your quiet nature can absolutely coexist with monumental impact and success.
Okay, that's incredibly inspiring. It really helps reframe things. But the practical question for you, the listener, probably bubbling up right now, is how do I actually do that?
Right. The how-to.
How do I make my skills, my contributions, my value visible in my workplace without having to suddenly become the office extrovert or feel like I'm totally faking it?
And this is where we get concrete. The key isn't fundamentally altering who you are. It's about identifying and using strategies to showcase your value in ways that actually align with your natural strengths and comfort levels.
All right, hit us with the actionable steps. What's first?
Okay, first, leverage your writing and use digital communication tools. For many people who are naturally quiet or introverted, writing tends to be easier than speaking. This is a huge strength in the modern workplace.
Okay, so instead of fighting to get a word in during a chaotic meeting.
You could follow up later in writing. Precisely. Get comfortable sending concise email updates to your boss or team about your progress, key findings, recent accomplishments.
Like what kind of thing?
Oh, something straightforward, like just wanted to share that I completed Project X ahead of schedule and the initial feedback on Y looks promising. It just puts your achievement on record in a format you probably feel more comfortable with.
And things like Slack, Teams, project management software. These are really powerful tools for the quiet communicator then, aren't they?
They are your best friends. Seriously. They give you time to carefully choose your words, craft a clear message, and make sure your contributions aren't just lost in the rapid fire of verbal conversation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Especially in remote or hybrid setups, strong written communication is absolutely essential, and this is where a thoughtful, quieter person can truly shine.
Right. In an age of endless emails and chat messages, being articulate in writing really does provide visibility.
It absolutely does.
It's true. Whether you're the office chatterbox or the quiet genius, in the age of Slack and Zoom, you both have to type. It does level the playing field a bit.
It does.
So getting into the habit of documenting your work, your ideas, your wins, through memos, reports, emails, team chat updates, that's a powerful way to stay visible without having to constantly speak up.
Okay, second powerful strategy. Create what some people call a brag book or a portfolio of your achievements. This lets your work itself speak for you.
A brag book?
Okay.
That sounds much more appealing than actual bragging.
Exactly. It's simply a collection of your accomplishments, successful projects, positive feedback, maybe metrics showing impact, anything that demonstrates your value.
Right.
For those who find verbally promoting themselves awkward or uncomfortable, a portfolio basically does the bragging for you with tangible evidence. It can be a physical binder or, more commonly now, a digital file or folder.
So when you're in a job interview or even just a performance review, instead of just saying you did something great, you can literally show them.
That's the power of it. One career counselor actually called it a secret weapon for introverts. When you feel uncomfortable selling yourself in the moment, this portfolio is your advocate. It provides concrete proof.
Proof of your skills, impact, contribution.
Exactly.
It's like bringing receipts.
Right.
You say you streamlined a process. Here's the before and after data visualization I created showing the time saved.
Perfect example.
You successfully managed a challenging project. Here's a screenshot of the final deliverable and maybe a testimonial email from the happy client. Having that tangible proof is incredibly compelling.
It really is.
And it takes the pressure off you having to articulate every single win verbally. You could use this internally too,
Yep.
right? Like prepare a concise portfolio of your yearly achievements to share with your manager during review time.
Absolutely. It ensures your contributions aren't forgotten just because you didn't talk about them every single day.
Good tip. What's next?
Okay, next. Consider the power of silent leadership, leading by example and impact, not necessarily by being the loudest voice.
Right, not all leadership needs to look like a pep rally or a big speech.
Exactly.
Right.
You can take on impactful roles and influence outcomes in ways that suit your style. You don't have to be the person giving the big motivational speech to be a leader.
You can be the calm, reliable expert everyone trusts.
Precisely. Volunteer to mentor a new team member, maybe, or train junior staff. Quiet individuals often excel at thoughtful, one-on-one interactions and active listening.
Which are absolutely critical leadership qualities.
They really are. By coaching others or being the go-to technical expert quietly and effectively, you demonstrate authority, knowledge, and capability without needing to, grandstand in front of a large group.
Some companies are starting to get better at recognizing these silent stars, people who pursue goals that are less visible but are absolutely crucial.
Yes, and one suggested approach for managers is actually enabling these quiet experts to train new hires. It lets them lead through role modeling.
So if you are that quiet expert, volunteer for that opportunity.
Do it. You build a reputation as the highly competent, helpful person everyone turns to. Maybe you don't say much in big meetings, but you're indispensable behind the scenes.
Leading by example means if you're not comfortable talking a big game.
You set a big example through your consistent actions, your reliability, your integrity. Over time, consistent quiet excellence builds trust and visibility. It can definitely propel you into leadership roles.
Okay, what about networking? Because the idea of walking into a room full of strangers and making small talk makes me want to, turn and run.
Then don't force yourself into large, intimidating networking events. Focus your energy on targeted one-on-one interactions instead.
Okay.
If working a room sounds like torture, then just don't. Work a coffee chat or a focused lunch instead.
I love that reframing. Work a coffee chat. How would someone initiate those kinds of connections if they're feeling shy?
Start small. Identify just a few colleagues, maybe managers in other departments, or even external industry contacts you genuinely want to connect with.
Okay.
Perhaps someone whose work you admire, or who's in a field you're interested in. Send a thoughtful email or maybe a LinkedIn message asking if they'd be open to a brief, virtual or in-person coffee chat.
To do what exactly?
To learn about their work or get their perspective on a topic. Frame it as a genuine interest in them, not just as a transaction.
So making it less about networking to get ahead and more about genuinely connecting and learning.
Exactly. Introverts and quieter individuals often shine in these more intimate settings where superficial small talk can actually evolve into more substantive, deeper conversations.
That makes sense.
You might prepare a couple of specific questions beforehand. Planning really helps reduce anxiety, and then just focus on being a truly active listener.
Right.
This kind of genuine engagement leaves a much stronger impression than trying to shout over background noise at some crowded event. As one piece of advice put it, we quieter types can let our voices be heard in other ways, like through writing or one-on-one meetings. Use that strength.
Yeah.
A focused, prepared conversation with your manager about your career path, or a lunch meeting with a key cross-functional colleague that can put you on their radar far more effectively than trying to hold court in a large team meeting.
Absolutely.
And let's be real, one genuine, memorable connection beats 10 awkward, forgettable introductions any day.
True.
By building your network your way, focusing on quality connections over noisy quantity, you build allies who understand your value and can advocate for you even when you're not in the room. Okay, next point. And this is particularly crucial in the digital age. Speaking up can take forms beyond literal verbal communication. Building a digital presence on your own terms is incredibly powerful.
Right. Self-promotion, but in a way that feels comfortable and controlled.
Exactly. If you're a developer or designer, maybe maintain a portfolio website or contribute to relevant open source projects on platforms like GitHub.
Okay.
If you're a writer, analyst, or expert in your field, share articles, insights, or helpful tips on LinkedIn or maybe a personal blog. These platforms let you put your expertise and work out into the world without the pressure of real-time, in-person self-promotion.
You have time to craft your message, make sure it's polished.
And share it when you feel ready.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I know a designer who was really hesitant about self-promotion, but she started using Instagram and Behance just to share her work visually.
Nice.
She said it felt less like bragging and more like just showing her craft. And it ended up bringing her amazing opportunities, even though she still admits she shies away from receiving too much attention.
That's a perfect example. The key is finding the platforms and formats that suit you. Maybe it's participating thoughtfully in a professional online forum related to your industry.
Or writing detailed tutorials.
Yeah, that showcase your technical skills. Or simply posting brief, insightful updates on LinkedIn about projects you've completed or industry trends you're observing.
Giving examples.
I knew a colleague who started sharing short LinkedIn posts like, interesting challenge on Project X this week, here's how we approached it. Not boastful at all, just informative.
And did it work?
People did notice. They started reaching out to him as an expert.
In a world where so much initial interaction happens online, especially with remote hiring and distributed teams, your digital footprint often speaks first for you.
It really does.
Making sure it accurately and effectively represents your skills and value is a really smart move. The digital landscape offers completely new avenues for the quiet achiever to get noticed.
Often through written communication or showcased creative or analytical output, which, again, often aligns well with an introvert's strengths.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What else?
Finally, while you might not want to be, a public speaking guru, completely avoiding any form of presenting or speaking up isn't always realistic in most jobs.
True.
So the middle path here is preparation.
Preparation. Because being put on the spot is often the absolute worst scenario for someone who's naturally shy or prefers to think before they speak.
It truly is. So anticipate and plan for the speaking situations that are likely to arise and are actually important for your visibility.
Okay.
Before a team meeting, maybe a client call or an internal presentation, just spend a few minutes jotting down a couple of key points, questions, or suggestions you want to contribute.
I never go into a meeting I need to speak in without a little cheat sheet of bullet points.
Yeah.
Just knowing I have something ready totally cuts down the anxiety.
Exactly.
And it makes me way more likely to actually contribute instead of just staying silent.
Even one solid, thoughtful comment in a meeting can significantly increase your visibility and demonstrate your engagement and expertise. As one introverted professional put it, planning at least one thing she wanted to share before each meeting ensured she wasn't just sitting there silently. And it saved her from that dreaded moment of being directly asked, "Do you have anything to add?" when her mind might just go blank.
Oh, I hate that moment. So this isn't about dominating the discussion.
Not at all.
It's about ensuring your voice, representing your expertise, is heard in key moments. Think of it like preparing for a brief performance, a little practice, or scripting beforehand. Makes you feel much more confident and capable when the spotlight is on you for a moment.
Absolutely. And these small, planned contributions, they compound over time. They subtly shift perceptions, demonstrating that you have valuable insights and are an engaged contributor, even if you're not the most talkative person in the room.
Okay, these are fantastic, really practical, actionable tips. Leveraging writing and digital tools, creating that portfolio of wins, practicing silent leadership, focusing on focused one-on-one networking, building a comfortable digital presence, and preparing thoughtfully for speaking moments.
Yeah, it's a good toolkit.
This isn't about forcing yourself into an extrovert box. It's truly about finding ways to show your authentic value.
And it's worth noting how the modern work landscape kind of intersects with all of this.
Right. Remote and hybrid work. It feels like it could help quiet people or maybe make things even harder. Which is it?
Well, it really is a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, working from home often provides a much more comfortable, less stimulating environment.
Fewer intimidating boardrooms.
Exactly. Plus, there's a greater reliance on asynchronous communication like email and chat, which plays directly to the strengths of those who prefer to craft their message in writing rather than, improvising verbally.
Clear written communication is more critical than ever.
And thoughtful writers thrive here.
Yeah, when everyone's remote, nobody is physically dominating the room or getting daily FaceTime just by showing up. You can send a perfectly crafted update from the peace of your own home office, possibly in sweatpants.
That is true. But the flip side is that the out-of-sight aspect can definitely lead to out-of-mind.
Right.
If you're naturally quiet and now also physically absent from the office, you risk a kind of double invisibility.
So being proactive about visibility becomes even more important in that scenario.
Absolutely. In a remote setup, you just can't rely on accidental visibility from hallway conversations or just being seen on their desk. So making a conscious effort is key.
Like what kind of effort?
Maybe that means posting a brief summary of your weekly accomplishments in your team's chat channel, or making a point to contribute just one planned comment during a virtual stand-up meeting, even once or twice a week.
Just to ensure people remember you're there and contributing actively.
Exactly. It's about using the comfort and control the remote format offers, but being very deliberate about maintaining that digital presence. Many companies are actually realizing they need to put systems in place to actively solicit input from and recognize quieter voices on distributed teams.
To make sure they aren't missed.
Right. So lean into the advantages, more control over your environment, less overstimulation, but be proactive about staying on the radar.
Okay. And beyond just remote work, there also seems to be maybe a broader, albeit slow, shift in understanding the value that introverts and quieter personalities bring.
There is, I think, a growing recognition. Modern workplaces are slowly learning that the most effective teams and organizations are often a mix of different personalities and strengths.
How so?
Well, research suggests that introverted leaders, for example, can be particularly effective at leading proactive teams. Why? Because they are often better listeners and less likely to dominate discussions.
Allowing team members' ideas to surface and flourish.
Exactly. Extroverted leaders might excel in different scenarios, perhaps where a team needs really strong direction setting,
So it's less about one style being inherently better.
and more about the right fit or the right combination for the situation.
Makes sense.
When you have a team full of motivated, idea-generating individuals, a leader who excels at listening, synthesizing, and giving space, often an introvert can be incredibly effective at harnessing that collective energy rather than someone who's, competing for the spotlight.
Susan Cain's work, for example, really highlighted how much talent we lose out on by undervaluing introverts.
Yes, absolutely. Introverts bring essential strengths: careful preparation, deep focus, creativity that often comes from solitude, calm, thoughtful problem solving.
And these are increasingly recognized as indispensable qualities in complex workplaces today.
They really are.
Team meetings would be utter chaos if every single person was fighting to be heard at the same time. Thank goodness for the people who are happy to listen, process, and maybe follow up later with a brilliant insight.
Exactly. It's a chance to truly reframe being the quieter person on a team as bringing distinct, valuable assets, not lacking something.
Yeah. And we touched on the digital presence earlier, but especially now, in 2025, building that online footprint or personal brand doesn't require becoming some flashy social media influencer, right?
Not at all. That just means being intentional about how you present yourself professionally online.
Like curating your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, curating your LinkedIn profile to truly showcase your projects and skills, using professional social media channels to share your work interests and insights, or actively participating in online communities related to your field.
It's self-promotion on your own terms.
Exactly, in a space where you have time to think and craft exactly how you want to present yourself and your work.
Like that introverted data analyst sharing helpful data visualization tips on a blog.
Perfect.
Or a shy graphic designer consistently posting their latest work on platforms like Behance instead of having to verbally pitch it all the time.
Yes, absolutely. In an era of remote interviews and global talent pools, your online footprint might literally be the first impression you make.
Good point.
Making sure it accurately and effectively represents your capabilities is just smart career management. The digital world has opened up powerful new avenues for the quiet achiever to get noticed.
Often through showcased work or written content, which, as we said, aligns very well with the strengths and comfort zones we've discussed.
Definitely.
So pulling all of this together then,
Okay, yeah. We've seen that if you're incredibly talented but naturally quiet, you are definitely not doomed to be a well-kept secret forever. There are very real reasons why quiet talent has historically been overlooked, everything from that subtle bias towards the extrovert ideal in workplaces
right,
to the simple fact that if you don't talk about your work, people might not see it. But the empowering part is that there are concrete, actionable strategies to counter this.
right. It's about working hard, yes, but also being strategic about making that hard work visible through channels that feel authentic and comfortable to you. Whether that's leveraging written communication, creating a tangible portfolio of your wins, contributing in focused one-on-one settings.
Building a thoughtful digital presence or preparing for those key moments when you do need to speak up.
And remember the incredible examples we look at people like Rosa Parks and Steve Wozniak, who fundamentally changed the world not by being the loudest voices, but by their impactful actions and contributions.
And perhaps most importantly, the big takeaway. You don't need to fundamentally change who you are as a person to get ahead or be recognized.
That's key.
Trying to fake being an extrovert all the time is exhausting, and ultimately it feels inauthentic. Instead, lean into the amazing strengths you already possess.
Your reliability, your deep thinking, your careful preparation.
Your creativity, your ability to listen deeply, your integrity. Use the strategies we've discussed to ensure those strengths and the valuable work they produce are seen and appreciated by the right people.
Yeah.
Experts in the field agree. Introverts absolutely shouldn't feel pressured to become extroverts. Both personality types bring incredibly valuable and distinct contributions that organizations desperately need.
So the goal here isn't about forcing you into a mold that doesn't fit. It's about giving you the tools to show your genuine value and ensuring that the opportunities you deserve find their way to you.
And look, if all else fails, maybe you could just hire a professional hype person to follow you around announcing your achievements. That's a business idea right there.
In a way, that's actually what having a really good manager or a mentor or an internal champion is for.
That's true.
They can often advocate for you
Yeah.
and highlight your contributions when you're not comfortable doing it yourself. So building those genuine relationships we talked about earlier.
That's your real-world hype team.
Exactly. And many managers are actively learning how to spot and champion these silent stars now because they realize the talent they might be missing otherwise.
There really is a shift happening, I think, acknowledging the power of quiet contribution.
As someone who definitely identifies with finding it easier to write than speak sometimes,
Yeah.
I'm absolutely going to start sending that concise weekly email update to my manager. Sorry in advance to them.
And as someone who can easily fill the silence, I'm committing to making more space for quieter voices on my teams, because I know now that some of the most profound insights come not from the quickest response, but often from the most considered one.
That's a great takeaway. So whether you're naturally loud or quiet, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We truly hope you found some valuable insights and practical takeaways from our conversation. If you did, feel free to connect or share your thoughts with us. Maybe just a quiet thumbs up online as a nod to the theme.
Until next time.
Remember, you don't always have to shout to be heard. Sometimes the most impactful contributions are the thoughtful ones, delivered in your own authentic way. Consider the power of just a single well-chosen action or a deeply considered insight. Often, they resonate far longer and louder than any amount of noise.